they suddenly thought they needed a new person to come in, and I was that new person. So I took it as a responsibility to try to not screw it up.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Sonical.ly podcast where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo. Today's guest is a cornerstone of classic rock and the voice behind some of the most unforgettable moments in Styx' modern era, the legendary Lawrence Gowan. In July of this year, Styx released their 18th studio album, Circling from Above, and with tracks like the high-octane lead single, Build and Destroy, this record explores the tension between human ambition, nature, technology, and spirit. In this episode, we'll explore the stories behind Circling from Above, the creative chemistry among bandmates, their timeless classics, and what fuels their fire after 50 years of rock legacy. So let's jump in. Please welcome to the Sonical.ly podcast, Lawrence Gowan. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you, Elmo? Great introduction. Thank you very much. I hope I can live up to that.
I'm sure you can. Just to start, you joined Styx in 1999. What were those first months like for you?
They were fun. They're still fun. It's first of all, stepping into a legendary band like that, where so much of the heavy lifting, if you want to call it that, has already been accomplished. Their hope at that time was that they could extend the life of Styx for about 5 years. That was kind of that was the goal at the time, and to play at least 100 shows a year. Because they felt that the band had actually underplayed, and suddenly there were all these cultural references to Styx music in the Simpsons and Adam Sandler's Big Daddy movie and TV commercials, etc. And they felt they wanted to take advantage of that at that time. And with the touring schedule they were looking at, and they suddenly thought they needed a new person to come in, and I was that new person. Now, we had met in 1997 in Montreal when we did a couple of shows together, and so they were aware of me from that time on. So for the 2 years intervening there, when I stepped into the band, this is not to sound immodest, but I felt like I think these guys have made the right choice if they have to go with someone new, and hopefully I'm going to prove them right. I don't want to prove them wrong. So, but I did feel with my background prior to joining the band that I would have the wherewithal to at least give it a shot. Whether we could make it for 5 years, nobody could predict that. It could have been 5 hours, but I felt this was, it had a chance. I remember JY exclaiming, kind of the last little rehearsal we had before our first show, he said, I'm feeling extremely, in a thick Chicago accent that he has, extremely confident about this whole thing. Confident, that's a new word. And but that, if you want to look at it this way, that was 26 years ago, going into 27 pretty soon. And the band is really just continued to be extremely strong at the box office, and the faithful that have been with the band from the very beginning, are still with the band, and new generations are following it now. So I took it as a responsibility to try to not screw it up.
Did things gel right away, or did it take time for things to sort of like ferment and really gel with you as sort of like the new piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, I think in some ways, one of the other aspects of being in a band is that you have to kind of immediately hit it off as people. It's just as part of the nature of it. So if you're kind of laughing at the same jokes and finding that you have a similar sense of a mission ahead of you, and you're united on that front, and you want it to succeed, and everyone in the room is kind of like has the same goal, you tend to find great ways of getting along right off the bat, and then that is amplified when you go on stage, because it's such a wonderful shared experience to be in front of thousands of people that are in this ecstatic state and enjoying what it is that you're able to do. So, having said that, I would say, for example, is our show far better today than it was 26 years ago? I would hope that it is.
Mhm.
because it's always been the intention of everyone in the band to try to improve the show on a nightly level. You know, everyone's looking for that one little nuance that'll lift it to something a little bit beyond what it was the night before.
Mhm. A lot of classic rock bands slow down or rest on the hits, and you mentioned it was supposed to be sort of like a 5-year extension, but that turned
Yeah,
into like a 20-something year extension.
yeah,
Styx keeps making full-length albums, and
yeah.
we're going to be talking more about the new one in just a sec. But what drives that creative output even now to just keep on creating?
It connects to your previous question. I think that it's part of the lifeblood of a band, and wanting to continue to meet the standard that has been pre-established to satisfy ourselves as musicians, first of all. That's the most important thing. And then with that part accomplished, to hopefully reach the audience that have loved this band for decades now and give them something of this era that connects seamlessly in our minds with the classic era of rock that they love so much. So it's part of the we feel it's part of the what's the word, mandate, or whatever the glue is that keeps a band together. It's that creative spark has to be nourished along with all the other aspects of keeping a band together.
Speaking of which, prior to you coming along, it was more of a singular creative songwriter approach, from what
Yeah,
I have researched.
yeah.
And it is said after you joined, there was more of a shift to a more collective writing approach. Is that true? And what is the typical creative approach that you guys have in the studio together?
Well, okay, so I can't speak to the past since prior to joining the band, but from my Styx history class,
Yeah.
conducted every day on the tour bus every day between the JY and Tommy Shaw and Chuck. Um, they there was far more collaboration, and prior to my joining the group, and each person, Tommy Shaw and Dennis DeYoung and James Young, who were the main writers, obviously, would make various little fix little parts or add little bits into each other's songs, but the initial person that brought the idea would take the credit. At least that's the way it was explained to me. Whereas when I joined, I one of the when we made our first album, I said, really, we should probably just share the songwriting credits, because we're all going to contribute to this in some myriad ways. And since then, because of just basically the realities of it, the writing team has been Tommy Shaw, Willie Vankovich, and myself. And sometimes individually, Tommy's got a song on this album that he wrote entirely. Will has two songs that he wrote entirely, and most of the others we wrote as a three-way partnership. And um, it's really interesting, honestly. It's interesting because the song never ends up where it could have possibly ended up had it been written by one of the writers. It bounces around. You go from extreme anxiety and and uh, and almost uh, like what's a good analogy? It's a little bit pain. It's a brain exercise at first. Let me put it that way, where you're trying to come up with something that's worthy of the next few hours' attention. And usually, one of the three of us will have a nugget. Like, it can be the tiniest little bit that we'll begin to expand upon. And as that expansion continues on, this is part of the bumpy trail that it goes through. It's almost like I'm trying to think of an analogy, a little bit like riding a mountain bike or something, where you suddenly got this great part where it's really whooshing down the hill, and you're not hitting any trees, and then you hit a tree, and it's so there's these moments, but ultimately there's a moment where suddenly the song takes on a life of its own that's beyond any of the writers. And at that moment, that's when you have a moment of it's a kind of a marvel, where you stand back from it. It's almost like you're apart from the song, because it's got its own life. I guess it would be something like a carpenter making, a cabinet or a carving or something, and suddenly it exists, and you begin to wonder how did we get there, and yet we did it.
Mm.
Um, so it's a lot of mental fortitude, I'd say, a lot of luck that just sort of happens. But when you have a brain trust like that, where the ideas are bouncing around, you can suddenly the lens will focus to where there's something really, um, uh, really worthy here for you to finish off. And then once we've done that, and we look at each other and can honestly say, "I'm digging this." That's where it lands.
Mm. The key word that I picked up from a lot of that was the word exist. Um, Circling above kicks off the album with such a striking metaphor,
Yeah.
and it's satellites drifting without purpose. In that realm of existing, where did that image
Right.
come from, and did it shape the tone for the entire album?
So I think if you look at the last three albums, starting from The Mission, which was in 2017, which was what, a space voyage, uh, that goes off in a direction that they weren't anticipating, and then Crash of the Crown, which is an album that kind of thematically comes back to a sense of renewal after a cataclysmic event. And there was something, because I wasn't part of the writing of Circling from Above, but when I heard it, as Tommy and Will were working on it, I thought this ties in well with the previous albums, because they were there were two thoughts simultaneously there. Will was, just happened to, I guess, he was looking at we were discussing, in fact, a lot about space junk and how much is up there, just floating around randomly, now out of use, and yet slowly descending to Earth. And so we got to do something about that. And at the same time, Tommy was marveling at these starlings that had suddenly, would seasonally arrive in his backyard and flood the skies. And, you began to see how nature and man, like, we're a part of nature, but our nature is to build things, is suddenly occupying this space above our heads. And not entirely in a benign way. It can be quite perilous, because the space junk has to be dealt with, and and birds have droppings. I'm just joking. No, there's basically, there's almost like you can see. This is the way I interpreted it. You can almost see that there's this impending fight for who owns the skies. And I suppose ultimately, when I heard that, that's where I started thinking about the idea. The whole, I had this musical piece, and I was calling it "Build and Destroy," and I thought this would connect really well with Circling from Above. And I presented it to the other two guys on a couple of occasions, and it was like, yeah, that could be, yeah, that could work. But then toward the end of the record, it suddenly was like, okay, now it's time to let's finish that Build and Destroy idea, because it does tie so well. We'll open the album with Circling from Above, and one will hand off to the other, and you'll see that there's a thematic thread that will run through that about the struggle between man and technology, if you want to call it that, and nature. And ultimately, it's a foregone conclusion that nature will ultimately win, because it just has to. And in the meantime, we're going to continue to do what we can to make life easier for ourselves by coming up with all kinds of contraptions that will do good and sometimes devastating things.
The other deep piece that I really felt from the album is "Forgive."
Thanks.
Yeah, there's a line that says, "I'll keep saying I forgive you.
Yeah.
Please forgive me too, until the day it's true."
Yeah.
That probably can resonate with so many people, because if you have any sense of spirituality within you, then forgiveness is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Forgiving others and forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
Was that based on a real situation, or was it a more universal cry for healing?
Yeah, so that was those are the lines that I contributed to that song. Will and I wrote that one together, and that was where he had the basic chord structure to it, and I just thought, I don't know, it was one of those moments where I thought, I was thinking about I've lived long enough now that there are things that as you just described it, it's good for the soul to forgive, right? And we kind of want to do that, but when we're being very honest with ourselves, we can give pay lip service to that, but not really fully believe it and internalize it to a point where you actually believe it. Okay, so and obviously, I've probably caused and some of that with other people as well, whose forgiveness I would like to have. And I might even be unaware that I require it. I might have done something that they're trying to forgive in me. So we we aspire to that, but it's a very difficult thing when you take stock of your existence on the planet to truly. It's not a bad thing to keep saying it, because if you keep saying it, perhaps it'll become a reality. And that's basically what I think I was getting at. And then that's why, the line is in there, please forgive me too, till the day that it's true. And hopefully we reach that day. And it's universal in that sense, as far as the human experience, that you're hoping for that. Because, as people say who've forgiven, who truly feel they've forgiven some incident or something that's happened to them, they feel like they've been freed by it. They're no longer chained to it. They're free of it. So it's a tough thing that everyone has to kind of balance out in their life in some way.
Did that song provide some sort of freedom for you and some catharsis after it was all said and done? It was all written and it's like kind of put out there into the world?
That's a great way of saying it. I don't know. It does when we're singing the song, when we're doing this. There's something about music that when you just your aspiration within the piece can provide that sense of well-being, or peace, or whatever, however you want to describe it, of that the issue has been settled, so to speak, during that song. So for the duration of that song, it feels really good, because you think I've done it, right? But that's completely different from walking away from that in your life and having to navigate those little transgressions that. I should definitely point out that it's a two-way street, as I said before. It's like the most important thing is please forgive me too, because you're probably the other half of this equation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Earlier you mentioned the song Build and Destroy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lyrics from the song is, are we destined forever to build and destroy?
Yeah.
That feels like a very human or even political question.
Yeah.
Was there a specific event or mood that sparked that idea?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about that. Because again, that line came in as we were writing the chorus, and I just said it because it's just looking at history. By the way, this is the lovely thing about being a progressive rock band, is you can go into kind of deep subject matter like this,
Mm-hmm.
or and sometimes it gets too deep and can get like it's no longer profound, but it's actually,
But that's what we're all about. We love like diving into those kinds of
yeah.
the depth
So,
of the lyrics. We love
oh,
that.
I know,
So
and
yeah.
as do I,
Mhm.
and I'm careful sometimes when describing the lyrics, because people personalize songs, and even the way that you've described a couple of things so far, I'm like, oh, that's great that he got that from that, and sometimes that can even exceed the original inspiration for it,
Mhm.
because you've interpreted it in an excellent way. Um, are we destined forever to build and destroy? We are. The nature of human beings, from my little observation of history, is that we probably from the time the wheel came around. Oh, it came around, there you go, because before that it was square. um, no, from that time on, we have been seeking ways of making life more um, not just easier, but more enjoyable by the things that we come up with. Obviously, the latest thing is, of course, the hot topic is AI. And from what I've seen so far, yeah, it can do some of the most devastating things. It could be an extinction event, or it could actually come up with ways of thinking of solutions to problems that we could never have come up with without the help of it. And we've come up with this. That's pretty impressive. At the same time, with every invention we come out with, comes out with. I say we because I'm just including myself in the collective of humanity.
Mhm.
We every invention we come out with, it has its downside, and sometimes its downside can be rather devastating. I mean, I know this is I don't want to get too far into this, but let's say, for example, where I live in Toronto, we have a nuclear power plant that provides us lots of electricity, and I get to play my instruments. I'm sure I got my piano.
Oh,
I've always got I've always got a
awesome.
keyboard in the hotel room.
Maybe we can get a little a sampler.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Sometimes it doesn't come across on the computer,
Mm.
but over the air, over the call. But I like that nuclear power plant for all the energy that it gives me for my playing my synthesizers, etc. And then we know that nuclear power can be used for something rather devastating if history has shown us anything. So it's like that. We have always had this duality with every invention. There's a wonderful upside and a terrible downside, and sometimes we have to be the destroyers just in order to get rid of it.
You did mention AI, and this is where songs can be auto written and performed by synthetic voices.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering what your thoughts about this are. Do you think there's still space in the future, as we progress in this whole technology fueled era,
Yeah.
for the kind of musicianship Styx represents? Because it represents something real, raw, very human. What are your thoughts on the future?
I have many thoughts about that. If you're pitting one against the other, and as far as how they're going to the friction of those two things, first of all, I would say that the human is in the arts. The human is so far ahead at this point. It's not even a race. I mean, my thoughts on this keep evolving because, for example, when I first heard about a year ago, so somebody put online the AI Beatles, right? And it's weird because your brain, for a moment, I'll just keep it in the realm of music since that's what I might know a little bit more about. Um, your brain is tricked because it's like that does sound like John. That does, yeah, that's kind of like Paul. That's George, and that's a song that's kind of is it Beatlesque or is it no? It's garbage. That's what it is. It's absolutely it has no emotional impact on me at all. There's no shiver coming up on my on my arms there's nothing going up and down my spine as far as connecting me to this whatsoever
Hmm.
at all. It would be a little bit like, okay, here's an analogy. I'm looking at you right now, Elmo, and it's part of the conversation is how I see you reacting to it. If we shut the screen off and I just talk to the screen, right? I'm getting no emotional feedback from it at all.
Hmm.
And yet it's still the same machine,
Hmm.
but it's the human element that you're infusing into it that is causing us to have this engagement. And when I've heard the AI bands, it's impressive that a human could actually come up with how to make a machine do that. I'm intellectually impressed.
Hmm.
Musically, it falls so far short of the mark that I can only laugh at it. It's very poorly done. It has no connection to my life. There's nothing where I can see myself in the lyric. It was a jumble of cliches, none of which really made a whole lot of sense. Even I'll go even further. Even though I remember some of the great stream of consciousness, I'll call them lyrics that I would just listen to from Yes, say, or I think with John Anderson, I think was the best at that, where he could conjure up great images in your mind just from a collection of words, almost in some ways almost James Joyce like, where it's like is this a real thing or is it a gobbledygook sentence that he's put together that just has me scratching my head, but yet is so entertaining. Okay,
Hmm.
that's what a human can do, and so far I haven't seen that come from the machine. I can see gobbledygook, and it's not resonating. It's not vibrating with me. Having said that, I think there's going to be some great musical advantages to having it just in the sonic area of what can be achieved.
Mhm.
Much like when electricity was introduced to music, in very short order, we invented rock music because without electricity, it kind of didn't exist. It was, you know, a loose kind of country and rockabilly-ish thing. But electricity came in, and suddenly you could make a big noise with three guys.
Hmm.
So it could be like that.
Mhm.
Um, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but ultimately, I think the human hand in the realm of the arts will continue to be the winner.
Beautiful. We have one more question about the album.
Sure,
Only You Can Decide is a powerful closing statement,
it
and
is.
it sounds like it's speaking directly to someone in crisis.
Yeah.
Why did you want to end the album with that message?
So that's a Tommy Shaw song, and when I heard him play it, because it's such a poignant piece and such a poignant little statement in a very plain speak way that anyone can understand. It doesn't go too deep into the weeds. Um, I when I heard that song, I thought this if this is the last song on the album, this is going to be a really strong album. It's a weird thing to think, but I just thought if this is where we end up, if this is where the road leads to, is that statement, it's going to be a very strong record. Much like, not that I'm comparing totally, but much like the fact that when I heard the end of Abbey Road, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. I just thought, wow, if you ever heard that, you'd think you might think, and maybe George Martin thought it, or maybe Paul McCartney, I don't know, but one of them thought, let's get to that's the final statement. And by the way, I know that Her Majesty comes after that, but that was a joke. I think I don't. Maybe it wasn't a joke, but that final statement, that only you can decide your fate, I think could be taken universally, easily, as us as a collective species, or on an individual basis. A very unique thing about what power we have to shape our own destinies.
We're at the final question for the segment, and then we'll move on to the rapid fire round really
Sure.
quick, and then we'll be able to close out.
Okay.
So you know, Styx seems to be gaining fans across generations even now.
Yeah.
Gen Z is a huge sort of audience for us, and it seems like more and more of that generation is searching for some sort of significance, and a lot of them are finding it in what you guys do. A lot of them might turn to, hey, I want to do that too. I want to be like Lawrence, and I want to be like the Styx. If you could offer any advice to the future of songwriter artists that look up to you, what would that be?
I'm gonna take my jacket off for this question. Yeah. Okay. So this is where it gets really tricky because you have to be so aware that when you're trying to pass the torch, so to speak, to the next generation, that you don't say something that sends them down the wrong path. So I'm very reticent when it comes to just giving blanketed or specific advice. But my blanket advice is the one that I don't mind doing because it's a generality, but it's one that I fully believe in. And that is that first and foremost, fall in love with music for its own sake. Because it contains its own reward. I'm going to sit here today and I'm working on this George Gershwin piece, trying to get it together, and here in a hotel room because I just love music. I don't know if I'll ever perform it publicly other than to myself and maybe the neighbors that live around me who are forced to listen to me pounding on the piano.
Mhm.
But it's it contains its own reward. It will enrich your life in ways that you just can't imagine. Music just does so much to the human spirit and to your mind. If you're getting these, I'm kind of quoting. There's a guy, there's a professor at NYU, I believe, named Galloway, who talks about your passion versus what you're good at. Find what you're good at. If you're getting real indications that people are very impressed, not kind of impressed, but very impressed with what you're doing, you might be able to pursue this as a career. And once you even begin down that road, be aware that there are all sorts of other factors that have to step in order for you to get to the next level. And one of them is luck. You have to be in the right place at the right time, and you can't predict where that will be, right? Because we I don't believe we can predict the future, although I will be looking at my horoscope after this. Um, so anyway, the you have to do all that. That preparation has to be done, where you're ready to meet the moment should that moment arise. Um, this is where I stop going any further, because when it comes to the rungs of the ladder that I grew up in, which was there were four major labels, and you had to kind of get either associated or with one of those before things could really expand. Now, younger people use these devices. I'm holding up my phone here, to such a great degree to reach, thousands of millions of people. I've watched every year. I watch a new artist. What's the term now? Blow up. To just expand their audience. I'll go with my own vernacular. Expand their audience exponentially, almost like within weeks, from their own efforts. Just from their own efforts, because they cleverly put whatever they're doing across to where it snowballed. That'd be the Canadian turn on like wildfire if we're close to the equator. So you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so I stop myself short from going further than what I've said, because I'm really impressed with how people can use technology to make their music really reach people. Um, at the same time, I would say, so ultimately, I'm going to go back to my very first thing and say, music will not let you down once you engage with it.
Mm, love it. I think that's going to go a long way for a lot of people. We just thank you so much for your transparency and your willingness to give. If we can transition to the rapid fire round, it's just a couple of questions, and then we can just close out with anything you'd like to promote to the community. The
Okay.
first question is, what's a sound that always brings you joy?
Okay. That's a great one. I love the sound of a mellotron. A mellotron is an
Mm,
instrument that was invented in the 1950s. The Beatles wound up using it, the Rolling Stones too, and in the 60s, it was invented. We're talking about AI. It was invented to as a parlor or kind of instrument to be used in a bar that could replace a whole orchestra, which is laughable. But it's got its own beautifully melancholic tone. Genesis use it a lot, yes. Elton John has it on a few records. It's this melancholy tone of strings that somehow feels so good, and you can't explain exactly why. But I love the sound of that's just one of the many instruments that brings me joy to hear.
love it. What's one Styx song that never got the love it deserved?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, I would say I've been working recently on one called yeah, Lords of the Ring. I really
Mm,
like that piece. It's got all the progressive pompousness of that era. It's on their Pieces of Eight album, and I think it's really strong. I just really like the whole Tolkien references that run through it, and the fact that it takes you into this fantasy realm, which is a good place to go nowadays when things get a little too real. We'll give that song some love today. That one in Queen of Spades. That would be the other one. Yeah.
beautiful. If you could jam with any artist from any era, dead
Oh,
or alive, who's on your
oh,
dream bill?
oh, God. Oh, what a question. Come on, man. I guess I guess if there was any one, you know, and when you say living or dead, the dead kind of have an advantage in that with that question, because you still think, hey, it's possible that I could
Mm,
maybe one day get a chance to play a note or two with Peter Gabriel or Paul McCartney or Elton John. You know what I mean? But if we're going to go into the realm of the dear departed, I'd say somewhere, if there was a knock at the door and it ended up being John Lennon, I'd be thrilled beyond all words. But if there was knock at the door, probably knock at the door that went like this.
yeah.
Okay, good. It came across. Yeah. Then I would definitely let Beethoven in. I'm sure we'd have a fantastic one-sided conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully he could read lips in English.
That's what I mean.
What's something about the music business you wish you knew from the start?
Well, we touched on it. That luck is one extremely important factor as to where you end up landing.
We made it, Lawrence.
That's it.
That's it. You
That
know,
was the
that's
rapid fire.
they gave me 30 minutes, and we went a
Okay,
little bit over. And I thank you
that's
for
that's okay.
your blessing and your grace.
No problem.
I just want to say thank you again for doing this. And the last question is,
Yeah.
what's next for you and Styx?
Oh,
Anything you want to share with the Sonically community?
well, the Sonically community. First of all, keep going, keep it sonically cool, and the Circling from Above is the latest Styx album. So I would love it if you would spend some time and check it out. And if you want to really check it out like an album instead of just kind of jumping around. Listen to 40 minutes of music without any other distractions, and you might find that to be a wonderful means of entertainment. And then for me, I guess the big thing is I have a tour of Quebec coming up, which is the French part of Canada. That's in November, but culminating in a show in my hometown of Toronto at Massey Hall at the end of November. And that's, I won't look any further ahead in the future than that.
Thank you so much again for doing this,
My
and
pleasure.
much love to much love and blessings to you and the guys, and in
Thanks,
the future of what you're doing. You guys are so amazing. So
thanks,
thank you.
man. Well, thanks for having us on Sonically, and yeah, keep it up.
Thank you, sir.
I had a fun chatting
Me
with you.
too. Me
Okay,
too.
all
Take
the best.
care.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye.